In every city, there are streets the streetlights forget. Places where the fog doesn't lift, it settles. Into the bones. Into the records. Into cases no one wants reopened. They told her it would be simple. Walk in. Walk out. Don't look back. But nothing in this world stays buried. And everyone looks back, eventually. Some crimes don't end when the sirens fade. They send out waves. Through testimony. Through memory. Through the people who survive them. They reverberate.
Help me.
This is one of those cases. This is Reverberating Noir.
A man leaves his home on a grey October morning. He is well dressed, respected, a knight of the realm. He walks through the crowded streets of London, past the churches and the coffee houses and the ordinary noise of city life. And then he simply vanishes. 5 days later, his body is found on a lonely hillside north of the city, a sword driven through his chest, his neck broken, his shoes impossibly, inexplicably clean. And within weeks, that body, that one broken man on that one cold hill, will have set an entire nation on fire. Welcome to The Case. I'm Adam Jones.
And I'm Nina Jovovich. Today we're going back, way back, to 1678, to Restoration London, and to one of the most politically explosive unsolved murders in English history, the death of Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey.
Before we get into what happened to him, Nina, let's set the scene, because context here is everything.
It really is. England in 1678 is a country that is genuinely frightened. The Civil War, the execution of a king that's less than 30 years in the past, the Great Fire of London, which most ordinary people blamed on Catholic arsonists, is only 12 years gone. And the heir to the throne, James, Duke of York, is an openly professed Catholic. So the fear is real. The soil is ready. All it needs is a spark.
And that spark arrives in the form of two men, Titus Oates and Israel Tonge. In August of 1678, they approach a justice of the peace named Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey, and they bring with them a written deposition, a document alleging a vast Catholic conspiracy to assassinate King Charles II, to massacre Protestants, to burn London to the ground. They call it the Popish Plot.
Now, Godfrey is an interesting choice for this. He's a respected figure, a knight, a woodmonger, a merchant dealing in timber and coal who had built a reputation for genuine impartiality. During the Great Plague of 1665, when men of his standing fled the city, he stayed. He administered relief. He earned his knighthood the hard way. But he's also, by all accounts, a deeply melancholic man, prone to dark moods. And he has a premonitory quality, a sense, even before any of this begins, that something terrible is coming.
He listens to Oates and Tonge. He takes the deposition seriously, as his duty demands, but he urges caution. He tells them to take it to a more senior minister. He is not a man who reaches for the dramatic conclusion. That caution, as we'll see, may have cost him everything. Oates eventually gives his formal testimony before the King's Privy Council on the 28th of September, 1678. The council finds his story riddled with inconsistencies, but one name surfaces that gives the story just enough traction to survive. Edward Colman, the Duchess of York's former secretary. When Colman's papers are seized, they reveal correspondence with the French court, politically indiscreet. Not proof of murder, but enough to fan the flames.
And this is where Godfrey's behavior in those final days becomes so significant. He starts telling people he fears for his life. He believes he's being followed. He tells one acquaintance that he expects to be the first martyr of the coming crisis. Now, that phrase, the first martyr, you can read that two ways. Either he genuinely believes he's about to be killed by the people he's investigating, or he's a man in profound psychological distress whose sense of reality is fracturing under the pressure. Both readings matter, because both shape how we interpret what comes next.
On the morning of Saturday, the 12th of October, 1678, Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey leaves his home in the Strand. He is seen for the last time alive at around 5 in the afternoon near Street Clement Danes Church. He is walking alone. He looks, by accounts, like a man already half absent from the world. He never comes home.
For 5 days, London waits. Rumors circulate. And then, on the afternoon of Thursday, the 17th of October, his body is found.
Primrose Hill. In 1678, it is not the leafy North London park we might imagine today. It is open countryside, a rural hillside, isolated. 2 men, walking in the afternoon, discover the body of Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey lying in a shallow ditch on the south side of the hill, and the scene they find is wrong. In almost every detail, it is wrong.
Let's go through it, because the physical evidence here is everything. First, the sword. His own sword has been driven through his body, the point emerging through his back. But there is almost no blood around the wound. The surgeons who examine him conclude that the sword was inserted after death. It's staging. Someone wanted that sword to be seen.
Second, the strangulation. The cartilage of his throat is broken. Deep bruising around the neck. His neck itself is broken. This is almost certainly how he died. But the sword was placed there afterward. Why? What message was someone trying to send?
Third, and this is the detail that I keep coming back to, his shoes. His body is covered in mud and dirt. The ground around him is wet, but his shoes are clean and dry. He did not walk to Primrose Hill. He was brought there, transported, and placed.
And fourth, his pockets had been turned out. The gesture of robbery. But his signet ring and his money were still on him. So not robbery. The appearance of robbery. Every detail of that scene was constructed. The question is, by whom? And why?
And here is where the story stops being about one man's death and starts being about something much larger and much darker.
The body of Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey becomes, almost immediately, a weapon. Within hours of its discovery, the narrative is fixed. He was murdered by Catholic agents. He was silenced because he knew too much. He is a Protestant martyr. The physical evidence, the ambiguity, the staging, the questions, none of it is examined as evidence, in any real sense. It is read as confirmation of a story that has already been written.
This is textbook moral panic. And what makes it so instructive is that the fear driving it wasn't entirely manufactured. The anxieties about Catholic political power, about the succession, about the fragility of the Protestant settlement, those were real. Oates didn't invent the fear, he weaponized it, and Godfrey's death gave him the ammunition he needed.
On the 31st of October, 1678, Godfrey is given a funeral that is less a burial than a political demonstration. Protestant clergymen flank the coffin. The crowd receives printed effigies of the Pope. A man who urged caution in life is deployed as a battle cry in death. He would not have recognized himself in it.
And then the machinery of justice, or what passed for justice, begins to move. A reward of £500 is offered for information leading to a conviction. £500. In 1678, that is a life-changing sum. And it produces exactly what you'd expect it to produce. Witnesses?
2 in particular. William Bedloe, a professional criminal, a confidence trickster, a man who had been operating across Europe under various aliases for years. And Miles Prance. A Catholic silversmith, Prance is arrested. He is thrown into Newgate Prison. And what happens to him there is one of the most shameful episodes in this entire story.
He's tortured. Not in the dramatic, medieval sense necessarily, but subjected to conditions and pressure that break him. He confesses. He recants. He confesses again. And his final testimony describes a scenario in which Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey was lured to Somerset House, the London residence of the Catholic Queen. Catherine strangled in the courtyard. His body kept in a room for several days, and then transported by sedan chair to Primrose Hill. It's a detailed story. It has the texture of truth, and almost none of it holds up.
The physical geography of Somerset House, as Prance describes it, doesn't match the actual layout. Witnesses contradict key elements of his account. The dates don't align. None of it matters. Because the verdict has already been decided.
Before we go further, if this kind of deep dive historical true crime is what you're here for, please take a moment right now and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell. We go deep on cases like this every week, cases where justice failed, where history got it wrong, and where the real story is far more disturbing than the official one. It genuinely means everything to us. Now, back to 1678.
3 men are put on trial for the murder of Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey. Robert Greene, Henry Berry, Lawrence Hill. A cushion maker, a doorkeeper, a servant, working men, Catholic working men. The trial is presided over by Lord Chief Justice Scroggs, whose conduct throughout the Popish Plot trials is, there's no other word for it, a disgrace. His summing up is less a neutral assessment of evidence than a prosecution speech delivered from the bench.
The jury deliberates briefly. The verdicts are guilty. All 3 men. They are hanged at Tyburn in February of 1679. They maintained their innocence to the end. And they were almost certainly telling the truth.
The plot does not end there. It consumes more lives, most notoriously Oliver Plunkett, the Catholic Archbishop of Armagh, hanged, drawn and quartered at Tyburn in July of 1681. On the basis of testimony so transparently false that even committed Protestant voices of the day struggled to endorse it, he was canonised by the Catholic Church in 1975, 300 years after his murder.
And eventually the lies begin to fray. Oates' testimony accumulates contradictions that even a credulous public can no longer absorb. The political climate shifts. In 1685, Titus Oates is convicted of perjury. Sentenced to life imprisonment, annual floggings, Miles Prance's perjury is formally acknowledged. And in 1686, the convictions of Greene, Berry, and Hill are overturned. Described in the official record as, and I want to read this exactly, a hardship and injustice. Pardons are granted to their families. The men have been dead for 7 years.
So, if Greene, Berry and Hill didn't kill Godfrey and they didn't, then who did? 4 theories have survived the centuries.
The first is the original one, Catholic murder. That agents connected to Somerset House or the broader Catholic community killed Godfrey to silence him. It's logically possible. But there is no credible evidence pointing to any specific person or group. The specific narrative that went to trial was fabricated. What remains is a hypothesis without a foundation.
The second theory is suicide, and this one has a long history. Sir Roger Lestrange, a fierce critic of the plot writing in 1692, argued that Godfrey took his own life. That his family or friends, to prevent the legal consequences of suicide forfeiture of the estate, desecration of the body staged the scene to look like murder. The clean shoes could be explained by a body transported in a coach. The post-mortem sword wound fits perfectly, and Godfrey's documented melancholy, his premonitory remarks, his sense of doom, all of it points to a man in profound internal crisis.
But the strangulation marks are hard to explain away. The broken cartilage of the throat, the bruising on the chest. These suggest the involvement of another person. Unless, and this is a possibility, some historians have raised the death itself was assisted. That Godfrey did not act alone, and that whoever helped him then staged the scene. It's uncomfortable, but it's not impossible.
The third theory is perhaps the darkest, that Godfrey was killed by elements within the Protestant establishment itself. That his murder was a deliberate act of political engineering designed to create a Catholic crime, to inflame the public, to destabilize the crown and the Catholic succession. If true, it means that the men who used his death most loudly, the men who called him a martyr, may have been the men who made him one.
We can't prove it, but we can't dismiss it either, and that ambiguity is itself the point.
The fourth theory robbery we can set aside. His money and his ring were untouched. No serious historian gives it weight.
So where does that leave us? With the honest answer, which is that we don't know. We genuinely, 347 years later, do not know who killed Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey, or whether another person killed him at all. What we know with absolute certainty is that 3 innocent men were hanged for it, that dozens more lives were destroyed, and that the machinery that produced those deaths was not a malfunction. It was the system working exactly as the people in power needed it to work.
There is something I keep returning to in this case. Robert Greene, Henry Berry, Lawrence Hill. We know their names because they appear in the trial records, but we know almost nothing else. No portraits. No letters. No descendants who carried their story forward. They were working men without the standing to generate the kind of record that survives. They were chosen as victims precisely because they were already marginal, already suspected, already outside the circle of those whose innocence was presumed. And then they were forgotten. While the man whose death they were hanged for a night, a justice of the peace, a man of standing is remembered, written about, discussed in podcasts 3.5 centuries later. That asymmetry is not a footnote to this case. It is the case.
What this story gives us, if we're willing to receive it, is a template, not a relic of a more barbaric age. A template, the predisposing fear, the charismatic accuser, the catalyzing event, the institutional complicity, the expendable victims, the delayed reckoning that comes too late for the people who needed it most. These are not features of 1678, they are features of organized human life. And the only thing that holds them in check ever is the insistence that evidence matters, that procedure matters, that the rights of the accused matter, especially when the accused are frightening, or marginal, or unpopular.
Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey left his home on the morning of the 12th of October, 1678. He walked through the streets of his city. And somewhere in those streets, in those 5 missing days, something happened to him that we will never fully know. His body lay in a ditch on a cold hillside, and the world did not mourn him. It used him. It turned him into a symbol, a martyr, a weapon, and in doing so destroyed the lives of men who had nothing to do with his death. The ditch on Primrose Hill has kept its secret for 347 years. I don't think it's going to tell us now.
But the pattern it exposed, that one, we can still read, clearly. If we choose to look...
If this episode stayed with you, and I hope it did, the single best thing you can do is subscribe to this channel, leave us a comment, tell us what you think happened to Sir Edmund Berry Godfrey. We read everyone. We'll be back next week with another case. Another story where the official version and the truth are not the same thing. Until then...
Stay curious, stay critical, and never stop asking who benefits from the story being told the way it's being told.
Good night.
And so the file closes. But the case doesn't. Not for the families. Not for the witnesses who still pause before answering questions. Not for a city that remembers, even when it pretends not to. The evidence sits somewhere in a box. The photographs fade. The names are spoken less often. But the echoes remain. If this story stayed with you, if you felt that silence at the end of each unanswered question, subscribe to the channel. Not for us. For the stories that never got a second look. For the voices that were cut short. For the cases that refuse to stay buried. Because the truth doesn't disappear. It waits.
And as long as the questions are still unanswered, the case isn't over. It's just waiting for someone to look again.
And here, it keeps reverberating.